Okay, I'd next like to introduce myself, Crystal Migwans. I forgot to put my nation on there, but I'm Anishinaabe. Ani Shikin Kwe Indigenous Jijak Dodan, Kwemekong and Dunchiba. I'm Crystal Migwans of the Anishinaabe Nation. I'm from Manitoulin Island, from a reservation called Kwemekong. I'm going to be speaking about the section today, Gender, Sexuality, and Indigenous Lifeways. I'm going to speak really quickly so that we have time to get to our other presenters. But I want to especially talk today about youth, about the something that is outside of state violence, the something that state violence comes to bear upon. I want to talk about Indigenous Lifeways as something that is still there, that is still valued, that is still happening, and that revolves around our Indigenous youth. So this is a section that was asked for by the youth of Standing Rock, and this is a talk, I think, that about gender, sexuality, and Indigenous lifeways. It's important because it talks about it's about family, it's about the continuity of Indigenous forms of life. This is an image that has appeared across protests that have been happening in Indian country recently. This is an image by Isaac Murdoch Day, and it's called Thunderbird Woman. How many people have seen this in images coming up around the protests? This is something that has come to Standing Rock and has been taken up in force by people making images, by youth, by activists, and it's something that is echoing across Indian country right now. So it's not just in Standing Rock. It's gone home to Isaac Murdoch's community, where there's a pipeline recently broke in the Great Lakes, not recently, but a few years ago, broke, and it was the largest inland oil spill in the United States history. It happened. It has already happened, and it will happen again. It has happened upon our bodies. It has happened to our communities. And it is just one of the many sites of violence that happens daily in Indigenous country. This is an image of Kanahus Manuel with one of the banners that they were creating on site at Standing Rock. She was arrested shortly after this image was taken. I want to read this image in particular, Thunderbird Woman, as a queer image. And I want to bring out queerness as a concept at the center of this struggle for Indigenous life. And I want to bring out youth as the center of this struggle, because this is about the continuity of Indigenous lifeways. Okay. There are two examples that I want to talk about from my own community to kind of show you this, talk about the struggles that are happening that I see in different communities today. The first example I want to talk about, in my community there was a spike in youth suicide, as in my community as many others, that happened a few years ago. This is an ongoing crisis. Even as our quality of life is, according to official registers, is going up, there's a sense of disjuncture that happens within the bodies, within the felt lives of our youth on the reservations. And this comes out in suicide epidemics in our community. Our leadership was panicked. They're like, what is happening? They commissioned a researcher to do a study to interview the youth, to interview the community and see what was happening. What did the youth need? Did they need another youth center? Did they need after-school programs? Did they need sports? Is it because of the drug problem recently? Is the drug problem because of this? They went and asked the youth, and after a few weeks, the interviews came back, and the recommendations were not that the youth need another youth center someplace on the periphery, not that they need more after-school programming, not that they need jobs, not that they need someplace to contain them, to tidy them away and to keep them busy while the stream of life happened around them. They wanted to be at the heart of the community. They wanted to be someplace, they wanted to do their sports right where everyone could see them and admire them and respect them. They wanted to be in the stream of life, and they were not. This is not something that can be addressed by a community center. It's something that the process of creating a community center, the process of talking about these things can bring out. But it's not something that can be fixed within the structures, the colonial structure that has been imposed today. There's a disjuncture here, and this is one of the sites that it appears at. The other site of just disjuncture that I'd like to talk about is the one that's recently come out in articles. It's called skirt shaming. There's a disjuncture between youth and elders on the topic of what is appropriate attire to wear into the ceremonial lodge. What is appropriate for a youth, for a person who identifies as two-spirit, who maybe is, their body is being read by their elders as female and they don't want to wear the skirt in there. This is being read as disrespectful by the elders. But it's not true to who that person is when they walk into that lodge. This is a site of disjuncture in some communities because of how tradition and how this perception of tradition that comes out of a very missionized version of what our religion was. This model of tradition has become strategically associated with decolonization, but at the same time, there's threads of these colonial forces that weave themselves throughout our efforts to decolonize ourselves. And whenever our youth come into disjuncture with the rest of their community life, that is a site where it's not working, and we need to reconsider. So, this image that I was thinking about and has been on my dash and keeps coming up, held in the hands of youth, being, I wish I'd included the image of Isaac Dake's daughter, who helped out make all these posters by dabbing a little heart on each and every one of those images. So young Wabba is going to grow up with that power in her already. I want to read this image as something that represents a moment of power that can happen at these moments of disjuncture instead. Thunderbird in the Anishinaabe tradition, and I'm speaking from Anishinaabe tradition today because I don't have reference to the Sioux community, but I believe that there's a similar kind of cosmology. Thunderbird power is in the sky realm. Serpent power is under the earth. Serpent power, Mishibishu, the great underwater serpent. There's these two poles in the cosmology that register often as male and female, register as thunder power and underworld power. There are things that seem like dualities that map easily onto things we've become familiar with. What we should think about instead, when we go to the oral traditions, when we think beyond the dualisms that map easily onto these onto colonial forms of knowledge, when we actually go and listen to these stories, we see thunderbirds, whole entire nations of thunderbirds that fly under the earth. We see nations of underwater panthers that fly in the currents above the sky. We see moments of contact between the worlds, and those are the moments where power happens. These are moments of exchange. I was raised in a tradition that was, in part, was Christian. I also had a family that was often going to the lodge or going to ceremonies. And in those spaces, it was my grandmothers and it was my aunts who were always telling me, put on the skirt, put on the skirt. And me, like everyone else, like every other young budding queer kid, like, putting on the freaking skirt. I guess for a while they thought it was disrespectful, but I think it's also important, that moment of, I'm not going to do it. There's a moment of assertion and power that happens in there that they listened to with me. And that is important because they're saying, if the youth is saying there's something wrong, maybe something needs to change. Maybe that person is saying something important to us. There's something recently, Leanne Simpson in Dancing on Our Turtle's Back was reflecting on Sylvia Miracle, who was talking about the different stages of life in Anishinaabe tradition, or in her case, in Haudenosaunee tradition. Leanne took those out and said, okay, all these different stages of life, from childhood to youth to parenthood to elder, each of those things need to be in a cycle. Each of those things need to be learning from each other. We have a system in which wage labor, in which capitalism, in which these kinds of colonial structures assert a kind of wage laborer. They assert a kind of subject that is working for the state and generating a certain kind of profit, a certain kind of subjectivity, and that everyone else is kind of in suspension, waiting on the margins, kind of put out in their after-school programs in their youth center. Suspended modes of subjectivity that do not have an impact on the flow of life at the center. Those youth and those elders want to be part of this flow again. And in order to do that, we need to be learning from the youth. Sylvia Miracle says that we are supposed to be learning from the youth and not the other way around. They are not empty. They're not empty things that are waiting to be filled, that are waiting to be disciplined. They came from someplace important. They're bringing fresh knowledge up that the elders must learn from. So I was speaking about this as a queer image. To me, it seems a fundamentally queer image because of this association of woman with earth. It becomes really easily slips into orthodoxy at times. This is a woman who has thunderbird presence. This is not something that's unusual within Anishinaabe tradition, all right? This is not queer in the sense of something that is outside of Anishinaabe flow of life. This is queer in the sense of being a site of contact, a site of power. This is a thunderbird woman. This is a woman who is at a site of power between the land and the sky. And in those moments of exchange between two things that seem like dualisms, that's the site of power. And that's what the youth are trying to teach us today.